Rome, one of the greatest powers the world has ever known. And at the heart of this mighty empire stood a single man who would alter its destiny forever: Gaius Julius Caesar. Caesar's story is the journey of a young Roman, born into a modest family, who climbed step by step to the very peak of power. From his youth, he was shaped by political chaos, civil wars, and the ruthless struggle for control that defined the late Republic. When Sulla placed his name on the infamous proscription list, no one imagined that this young man, forced into hiding, stripped of safety, would one day reshape the entire Roman world. Yet it was in these early trials that Caesar's character was forged. When he was kidnapped by pirates, he did not behave like a hostage. He ordered them around, joked with them, and even promised that once he was free, he would return and crucify them. And when he was released, he kept his word. This single event revealed a truth that Rome would never forget. Caesar never forgot power, nor those who challenged it. His appointment to Gaul became the turning point not only for Rome, but for Caesar himself. The Gallic Wars became a testament to impossible feats: bridges built in days, legions marching across unforgiving terrain, and Roman discipline crushing resistance across vast lands. After 8 long years of conquest, hundreds of tribes were subdued. Rome's borders expanded farther than ever before, and Caesar returned not just as a general, but as a hero of the people. But in the eyes of many in Rome, he had become something more dangerous: a threat. The senators, jealous, anxious, and terrified, watched his rising influence with increasing fear. While the crowds celebrated his victories, the aristocracy whispered in dark halls, worrying about the man who commanded both armies and admiration. Eventually, the Senate issued its fateful decree: Caesar must return to Rome without his legions. It was a beautifully disguised trap. To return unarmed was to accept humiliation and likely death. To refuse was to commit treason. That night, Caesar stood upon the banks of the Rubicon. The only sound was the quiet flow of the river and the weight of Rome's future pressing upon him. Then he spoke the immortal words: Alea iacta est, the die is cast. With that step, Caesar crossed the point of no return. Rome was plunged once again into civil war. Pompey fled, armies crumbled, and the Senate, once powerful, found itself helpless before Caesar's relentless advance. And in the end, Rome stood before a single master. When Caesar returned to Rome, he restored order to a fractured republic. He renewed the aging calendar, solved the suffocating debt crisis, and introduced reforms that quieted the restless streets. New roads were built, production increased, and everyday life for the Roman people became easier than it had been in decades. But his greatest achievement was reshaping Rome itself. The Senate, once the heart of republican power, grew weaker with each passing decree. And then Caesar made history with a title no Roman had ever held: Dictator Perpetuo, dictator for life. This title struck at the very soul of the millennium-old Roman Republic. The people adored Caesar, but the aristocracy saw him as a storm gathering above their world, a threat too great to ignore. Among his enemies, 2 names stood above all: Cassius and Brutus. Cassius burned with jealousy, consumed by the belief that Caesar's rise had overshadowed his own glory. Brutus, however, stood in a far more tragic position. Caesar loved him like a son. Yet Brutus carried the bloodline of Rome's ancient liberator, the man who had driven out the last king. To him, the conspirators delivered a cruel ultimatum: stop the tyrant or be remembered as a coward. Secret meetings in shadowed rooms, oaths whispered under torchlight, forged documents circulating in the dark corners of the city. Slowly, the conspiracy took shape, an engine of betrayal built from fear, pride, and ambition. At last, 60 senators formed a hidden alliance: the Liberatores, the Liberators. But their chosen name was one of history's greatest ironies. For the Rome they claimed they were trying to liberate was standing strong because of Caesar. That morning, a heavy gloom settled over Rome. Caesar awoke ill, his body weakened, his mind clouded. Calpurnia, shaken by a nightmare in which she saw him drenched in blood, pleaded through tears, "Do not leave the house today." For the first time in years, Caesar hesitated. He truly intended to avoid the Senate, until Brutus knocked on his door. With a calm, reassuring voice, he spoke the words that would seal Rome's fate. "Rome is waiting for you." Those words softened Caesar's doubt. He dressed and stepped outside. On the Senate steps, a soothsayer called out to him one final time, "Beware the Ides of March, Caesar." Caesar smiled dismissively and replied, "It has come, but it has passed." But the soothsayer answered, "No, it has not." When Caesar entered the Senate chamber, everything seemed ordinary, business as usual. But this calm was nothing more than the silence before the storm. 60 senators slowly began to surround him, each pretending to be part of a routine discussion, each hiding a blade. Tullius Cimber approached with a fabricated request. Then in one sudden motion, he grabbed Caesar's toga and pulled it down. That was the signal. Cassius struck first, then the others followed. Caesar was stunned at first, then enraged, then simply fighting for his life. Screams echoed under the high marble arches. Sandals scraped across the stone floor, and steel met flesh with a cold, merciless sound. And then, Brutus stepped forward. Caesar froze for a single moment, and with a shattered voice, he whispered the words that would echo through eternity. "Et tu, Brute?" "You too, Brutus?" It was not anger. It was heartbreak, the pain of a father betrayed by the son of his heart. Moments later, Caesar collapsed beneath 44 knife wounds. His blood pooled at the base of Pompey's statue. A cruel symbol of Rome's brutal political cycle, the greatest man Rome had ever known, was gone. The conspirators believed Rome would greet them as heroes. They imagined applause, gratitude, celebrations in the streets, but no one supported them. The people loved Caesar, and his death ignited a fire of rage in the hearts of Romans. On the day of the funeral, Marcus Antonius took the podium. He lifted Caesar's blood-soaked tunic high for all to see, describing each wound, each betrayal, each blade that struck him. The crowd erupted in fury. The conspirators scattered. Rome descended into chaos. Flames, riots, and vengeance swept through the city. Amid this storm, Caesar's adopted son Octavian rose to power. Forming a temporary alliance with Antonius, he marched against Brutus and Cassius. On the plains of Philippi, the armies clashed, and the so-called liberators were crushed. Brutus and Cassius chose suicide over capture. The liberatores vanished from history as some of its most tragic and misguided figures. And from the ashes of civil war, a new leader emerged, Caesar Augustus. The Roman Republic was dead, and the Roman Empire was born. The death of one man reshaped the destiny of a nation. Caesar fell, but his name became eternal. Even today, the words Caesar, Kaiser, Czar all stem from his legacy. Rome killed Caesar, but Caesar changed Rome forever. Throughout history, countless leaders have risen and fallen. Some shook the world with their armies, some enchanted crowds with their words, some fought relentlessly for justice. But only a rare few left a mark powerful enough to reshape the destiny of an entire civilization. Julius Caesar was one of those few. His story is the story of an extraordinary will born from an ordinary life. He did not come from a mighty dynasty, nor was he raised among the elite families of his age. Yet something inside him, a force, a spark, was so profound that even the stone streets of Rome seemed to feel the weight of his footsteps, as if the city itself sensed its fate shifting. Caesar's greatest strength was not his sword, nor his armies, nor even his victories. His true power was his unshakable determination to shape his own destiny. Every hardship he faced, every danger, every exile, every humiliation did not weigh him down. They ignited him. A spark became a flame became a blaze, and the blaze became a storm that swept across Rome and never faded. Within Caesar lived a vast compassion and an iron will. He understood the struggles of the people, listened to their needs, and worked through sleepless nights to solve their problems. But when the moment demanded it, he never hesitated to make decisions that would echo through time. Today, leadership can mean many things, but Caesar's leadership stood beyond definition. He did not drive people with fear, he led them with trust. His soldiers did not fight for him, they fought with him. He marched through the same mud, endured the same storms, warmed himself by the same fire. What made him great was not ruling from above, but rising from within. Every reform he made came from truly understanding Rome, reducing injustice, restoring order, making life easier for ordinary people. His greatest battles were not won in fields of war, but in the daily lives of those he lifted. Caesar was not only a warrior, he was a thinker, a writer, a strategist. His ability to analyze problems often overshadowed even his battlefield genius. He crafted solutions with logic sharpened by a deep understanding of human nature. That is why his words remain guides for politics and leadership even today. His voice traveled farther than his sword ever could. He did not chase power. Power came to him because people believed in him. Whenever he appeared before the public, the heartbeat of Rome quickened. Yet with every great light comes a great shadow. His rise fed jealousy. His success fueled fear. He was a symbol of hope for many, but a symbol of threat for others. The fate of great leaders is always the same. The higher they rise, the more alone they become. And Caesar's loneliness whispered through the marble halls of Rome like quiet conspiracies. His name lives today for one reason. He was not just a ruler, he was the architect of an age. Every step he took, every law he reshaped, every path he opened still influences the world. From calendars to courts, from governance to military structure, everything he touched evolved into a standard for future civilizations. He did not die. His thoughts, his influence, his legacy embedded themselves into the soul of history. Caesar became not just a name, but a title, a symbol of strength and authority. What truly set him apart was not the wars he won or the reforms he enacted, but his ability to see both the light and the darkness in humanity and to guide them both. People followed him not because he commanded them, but because he understood them, felt with them, inspired them. Even those who opposed him could not deny his greatness. Even those who killed him knew he had changed Rome forever. Caesar is no longer physically alive, yet his influence remains, strong, vibrant, and ever moving like a tide that shapes the shores of time. Every leader, commander, and statesman walks through Caesar's shadow in some way. Every nation carries traces of what he built. He was not a part of Rome. Rome became a part of him, and no blade could sever that. Julius Caesar was born a man, lived as a legend, and endures as an idea. The winds of history will change. Empires will rise and fall. Civilizations will be born and disappear. But some names, like stars in the vast night sky, never lose their light. Caesar is one of those stars, and as long as humanity exists, his light will continue to shine.